Hi everyone, and welcome back to our frequently asked questions video series. I am Cameron Crosley, and today we will be presenting on the topic of partial renewals versus sublet agreements. This is a very common transaction that we deal with just about every week at JBMP Group, and in both scenarios, it pertains to tenants that currently reside in a unit. So you may receive this question for your own portfolio. Typically, we would advise that you allow us to handle it from end to end, just so there is no confusion, especially if we have worked with the group in the past. So before we get any further, I do want to highlight that we do have several materials available online for owners and or tenants that are looking to extend the lease agreement and partially renew or swap out their tenancy for another individual. The document that I'm going to gloss over today is a comprehensive guide of what are the primary differences between the two. I also would like to highlight that there are sections on our JBMP Group website that are visible via our support page that go into detail about what is the sublet process and also how a tenant would proceed in the event that they would like to remain in their apartment past the end date, but maybe their roommates do not want to join them. So wanted to highlight that those are available for you to self-serve following this video. I will add a link to those resources after the fact. So let's first jump into talking about what a partial renewal is. This is a scenario where your current tenants, partial of the group, would like to remain in the unit past their end date, right? So this is very common in our student rentals where you might have a 4 or 5 bedroom apartment. 3 or 4 of the tenants may want to remain, but maybe a 5th tenant is graduating, and so they want to swap out a friend to join them to extend for another 12 months. From a JBMP perspective, we charge a standard renewal commission for this, but we do treat the group as it is a new lease. So if we have existing applications on file from a group that we previously placed, we are happy to repurpose those and ask for updated information, while also asking the new tenant to apply and be screened as if it was their first time renting the apartment. What we will do as a leasing company, similar to our standard application process, is package that information up and present it to you as the owner, so you have a better idea of what the new group looks like. In some situations, if you have half of the group leaving, half of the group being replaced, it is important to see what those net new credentials are to see what the group looks like holistically. Again, we will send over our application package. We do have another video in this series reviewing what that looks like, but it's similar to how you reviewed the first application package, you will receive another one as it relates to this new group. What is important for the owners to understand in a partial renewal situation is JBMP Group will not collect any funds from that new tenant. We will handle all of the paperwork and follow the standard transition process as we would with a new lease. But what we have found in the past is that it is very, very challenging to collect money, first, last, and security from part of the group while you already have an existing ledger on file on your management side for the group. So it is really important that the owners understand we will handle everything administratively, transition them to you as the owner, and it is your responsibility to wrap up the account and make sure the funds necessary are on file. It is also very important that you do not commingle existing group versus new group, even if there is an overlap of tenants. So what that means is if a group would like to partially renew months in advance of the end date, which is very common, especially with our students, it is important that the minute you receive that transitional email, you isolate the new tenants from that application package that we will call out, and you bill their ledger for first, last, and security due prior to move-in, so that doesn't get lost in translation. Obviously, in a partial renewal situation, it is nearly impossible to prevent the net new tenants from moving in when their friends already occupy the space. So it is really, really important that owners recognize that responsibility and that they are planning on that from the minute they get the transition. It is very important that you do not wait until closer to the move-in to collect those funds, namely because you won't be able to prevent a move-in, and it will be a lot of money to collect in a short amount of time. So if you have questions about that, definitely let us know. But that is one of the biggest distinctions we wanted to call out. In a typical new lease situation, no one occupies the space. So it is very easy for us to withhold access instructions, whether that be a physical key or something different, for those tenants to move in. Whereas when part of the group already lives there, it's very hard to enforce that. The other thing we want to call out as it relates to partial renewals is the turnover activities. Again, anytime we have a partial renewal, it is not a requirement to turn the unit. We do have the current tenant sign a waived turnover addendum for these situations. Obviously, it's not feasible for your team to turn over one bedroom in a unit or paint or clean around a common area that already has furniture in place. However, we do recommend that owners do a walkthrough of the outgoing tenant space just to document their specific room and charge their security deposit accordingly. Again, we also do recommend making a best effort to do what you can to tidy up the space that you have access to. Obviously, you've had a relationship with part of the group in the past, and it will be important that you set a good expectation for the new tenants coming in, that you have their best interest in mind. So those are the biggest things I wanted to call out with a partial renewal. It is a unique scenario. It's a term that we have coined, the partial renewal, but want to make sure you understand it, that you're keeping an eye out on those application packages, and that once you receive the transitional information, you are taking the necessary steps to set up that account prior to the move-in. Because again, it is very, very hard to withhold keys or to collect it after the fact. The reason JB&P does not collect those funds is it because it gets very choppy to transition funds to the owner when they already have funds from another group on file. The accounting doesn't really work. So that's a quick overview on the partial renewals process. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. The last thing we're going to cover in this video is our sublet agreement. This is much more common. A lot of our owners are familiar with this. Again, very simply, you have a group in place. One tenant might be studying abroad or leaving middle of the lease for another reason, and they have found someone to replace them. It is very important for me to call out that JB&P will not source a sublet tenant. We will help in facilitating the administrative paperwork, the screening, and the new documentation, but we will not procure a tenant in a sublet situation. It is also important to understand that there is no cost to the owner for us to facilitate a sublet agreement. There is a sublet fee charged to the tenant wishing to leave the space that will help JB&P cover all of our administrative efforts. As we would with a normal lease, a subletter would be screened the exact same way, and an application package, again, like we talked about earlier, would be sent to the owner so that you can see what that new group looks like. Outside of that, the sublet process is very simple. Once you approve the group, we can handle the transition. But again, would like to call out that we do not collect the funds as it relates to first, last, and security. We will simply help them with everything else leading up to their move-in, and then we would ask the management team to take over. Outside of that, the sublet agreement is fairly straightforward. But again, we do want you to understand the differences. The paperwork mirrors a lot of the same paperwork you are already familiar with from our standard lease process. And that's it. Once everything's wrapped up, we'll transition them over to you, and you can handle the group from there. In closing, the last thing I would like to call out with either of these situations, we do ask that if a tenant reaches out to you directly and you would like JB&P to help, please refer that tenant directly to us at first if you are not familiar with the process. We have had owners in the past try to explain a partial renewal, try to explain what a sublet agreement is, try to explain what fees and what the process is associated with that. And oftentimes what we have found is it is not explained correctly, or something gets lost in translation. So again, if you do have a tenant that is interested in either of these processes and you would like JB&P to assist, please either introduce us over email or just shoot us a call, email, or text, and we will be able to reach out and help with that group. If you have any other questions, again, do not hesitate to reach out. Hopefully this video helped, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.